Oh, hello. Welcome to today's Decay, where we celebrate births and beginnings of everything important since the dawn of time. And on this day, December 7th, I am just catching up on my reading here. Here's Mel Gordon's The Grand Guignol, Theater of Fear and Terror, which is so much fun. Yeah. Because on this day, in 1898, Paula Maxa was born. She starred in upwards of 30,000 Grand Guignol performances in France, which was like a macabre, which was like a macabre live stage play series where people would get disemboweled, killed in all sorts of creative, gory ways. Paula Maxa being like the main scream queen, I guess you could say, at the time, who was apparently killed on stage upwards of 30,000 times between 1917 and 1933 while she was performing. Here's what I read about her. She has been flogged, martyred, cut into slices, re-glued with steam, passed through the rolling mill, crushed, scalded, bled, vitriolized, impaled, boned, hung, buried alive, boiled in a pot, set on fire, disemboweled, quartered, shot, chopped, stoned, etc., etc., etc. 30,000 times live on stage in front of a whole bunch of people. I don't know that any of it exists like on film. I mean, it was all stage plays, you know, like this sort of stuff. And it's pretty exciting, really. Morbid Anatomy Museum years ago did a whole live reenactment of these at Coney Island, USA. But that's kind of part of the appeal of live theater. Like, you need to be there for it. It's not supposed to be recorded. You don't really want photos. You need to be there for it. It's the experience of the audience member and the performers. And in this case, as they're like, you know, being ripped to pieces. Maybe the like best example of a reenactment of the Grand Guignol would be in the opening scenes of Carl Freund's Mad Love, starring Peter Lorre and Francis Drake. Yeah. Anyway, Paula Maxa. It's good stuff. Cut above the rest. On this day, 1910, Louis Prima was born. Maurice Tourneur's film Victory premiered on this day in 1919. Most people don't know Maurice Tourneur, Jacques Tourneur's father. He also got his start in France doing doing film versions of Grand Guignol storylines, like The Strange Case of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, and a couple other ones. Wax Faces, I think, something like that. Almost all lost is really early stuff, I'm saying. But he kept going back to the weird, the uncanny, the horrific in some form or another. So this is, you know, there's not a horror genre yet. There's not a horror genre until at least Dracula. Maybe you've got like the beginnings of it with like haunted house films in the mid to late 20s with like Cat and the Canary and Last Warning and all of those. But there's not really a horror genre per se until Dracula premieres in 31. So it's so interesting to me when you have like these proto-horror directors that just keep going back to whatever their aesthetics are, whatever appeals to them. Or in this case, Maurice Tourneur really did it. And so he started in France and then came to America, where he filmed a series of Lon Chaney Sr. movies. Before Chaney was really a star, he was not like a named person yet. Chaney doesn't become a star until The Miracle Man, which I think is 1919, 1920, give or take. Victory, filmed right around the same time, probably just preceding Miracle Man. Takes place on a desert deserted island. It's a Joseph Conrad story. Chaney plays a vicious pirate, and it's filmed like a film noir, even though it's, I don't know, 20 years before film noir is really happening. 15 to 20 years before film noir is happening. It's a beautiful movie set on location in, like, I think the South Seas, and it is really gruesome. There's some really interesting scenes that reference or recall, like, to the Grand Guignol, I'd say. There's like that one scene where, like, I think a head gets like thrown into fire, and this is like, you know where he's coming from. Yeah. It's a fantastic film. Around the same time, they also did Mysterious Island? No, what was it? Treasure Island. Totally different island. Treasure Island, where he cast Chaney as a series of a whole bunch of different pirates, all with very distinct and individual makeups. Also around the same time, he filmed but didn't get released for another couple of years. What was that one called? The source material is Glory of Love. I forget what it's called now. It's like the first Mad Wax Museum curator film starring Chaney, but that's a lost movie, sadly. I think it was finally released in 22, 23, but they shot it around the same time they did Victory and Treasure Island. And I'm blanking on the name of it now. While Paris Sleeps. That's what it's called. While Paris Sleeps. Yeah. I went so far. I got pretty obsessed with this film, actually. I'm really on a tangent. Sorry about that. I got really obsessed with this film because there's almost no stills of it. There's barely a write-up of it. It's just, Lon Chaney as if it's like The House of Wax of Vincent Price or Mystery of the Wax Museum with Lionel Atwill. But it's Chaney in early 20s, as directed by Maurice Tourneur, who was like truly a master. It is a story that the book is written by Leslie Beresford, I think, but goes by the pen name of just Pan, and the story is Glory of Love. And I finally tracked down a copy of the book because it was like only printed once, like, in that World War I era, pretty much. And while there is like a Mad Wax subplot, it's written in such a way that it's so vague or Victorian in what it's referencing, almost like the way I hear Turn of the Screw is written, that, like, therefore that would have just given Tourneur all of the ability to like have carte blanche to like make this movie however he wanted. So as much as I was able to track down an actual copy of this book, because we were thinking of doing like a stage play of it, because lots of people are looking to see a live version of While Paris Sleeps. There will be lines around the corner for this show. Anyway, you get very little out of it to be able to actively realize or picture what this movie would have been like. Oh well, such is life. And on this day in 1957, Marvin's Shock Theater premiered in Chicago. And there's a whole book by Donald F. Glute chronicling Shock Theater and Marvin. This guy's really cool. Almost has like a Peter Lorre feel to him. And so there he is. And he's like a beatnik. And he's got a band with him called The Dead something. What were they? It's in here somewhere, I'm sure. I'm not seeing it off the top of my head. But basically all of his bits, there he is again, all of his bits involved his wife, who you never saw her face, and I think it was really his wife in reality, and he was always like killing her in some form, or like pushing her into like a pit of lions or whatever. It was always like barely off camera, and always like just, you could never see, it was like this running joke of like, who was she? Who knows? She's dead now. Yeah. Anyway, it looks like a lot of fun because it's so not the archetype, the mold that is Vampira or Zachary, Anyway, that's it. So there you go. December 7th. That's the whole day. From me to you. Until tomorrow, goodbye.